Hey Kendall,
Hi, JZ. How's it going?
so excited to have you on Founder Design Thinking.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to chat with you today.
Well, welcome everyone to episode 9, where our goal is to find more than 10 unicorns like us. I'm Jay Z, and I love taking companies from 0 to 1 and getting that first traction. Let's welcome Kendall Warson from Cohart. Kendall,
Ooh.
why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm a Bay Area native, studied fashion design in college at Parsons, worked in the fashion industry in the early stages of my career, and ended up getting pushed out into the world of startups in the art world by way of this company called Wonder Spaces. Um, Basically, we're building these immersive traveling art shows in secondary markets throughout the US. It was a really cool company, scaled to 5 cities in 2 years. Um, and from there, went on to be an international art curator and work independently, mostly throughout immersive and experiential spaces. So a lot of shows throughout China and Montreal and Mexico. Um, and then from there, I met my current co-founder Shaveen as we were sourcing artists for an NFT blockchain gallery based out of Hong Kong about 5 years ago. And since then, we've been working together. Started informally and then became very formal in the past 2 years to build Cohart. And now I'm back in the Bay, so it feels serendipitous to be in Silicon Valley, building a tech company. And so I've circled back to my roots, and just really excited to be in the early stages of building this product.
Wow, you've been everywhere and done so many things.
It's been a journey, yeah. But I think once you get a taste of the startup mode of building, it's very addictive, and it's I think it's fun to go from 0 to 1. It's obviously very challenging, but it's so collaborative and it's very rewarding. So for me, I think I'm going to be a startup devotee for the rest of my life, whether that's building or supporting or investing down the road. I think it's such a cool way to spend your time to just be in that constant growth and learning mindset.
Yeah, I think the 0 to 1 is definitely my favorite. So it sounds like you're on your way to serial entrepreneurialism.
Yeah, we'll see. I say that now. Yeah.
Well, for anyone listening, please comment your questions and we'll see that in our feed on StreamYard. And Kendall, you can get to them as you like, or we can wait till the end. But let's go right into it. So, what is the most surprising thing that has happened in one of your design thinking sessions?
So we've been building in public from day one. I think that's something we've been very adamant about, is pushing products out in front of people that might not be fully ready yet. And when we got started, one of the core user insights from both artists and collectors is that they wanted to connect with each other. Like they wanted to have direct access to each other. Right now, it's really challenging to do that because there's so many people that are intermediaries in the art world, and they can create a lot of mystification and confusion around price, for example, but also like the stories of the art itself. So we found a lot of people were like really keen to just get in the weeds with artists and learn more about them from their voices directly. So in our first MVP, we had structured it kind of like Tinder in a way where you see videos of artists and when you swipe right, you're like immediately brought into a moment of matching and chatting. Like if you matched, boom, you're in a chat room. And I think for us, we thought it was going to be an interesting idea. And everyone loved the prototype, but then once we pushed it out as a live feature in our very early days of an MVP, people just freaked out. Like no one was ready to actually uh, chat with an artist. A lot of people felt sort of like violated in a weird way, and there are all these little things that social networks have baked in, whether it's liking something or following something or boosting something, where you can basically lurk for a really long time. And the minute that you're in chatting, it's like one-to-one connections. It's hyper intimate. It these two segments of users that had never really been directly connected before, so there's a lot of like awkwardness. So it was a great way to get a lot of feedback in terms of how people do want to communicate and how they want to like warm up to communication. But we found it super surprising that, the users were so taken aback by it, like, and really like put off by it in a way. And it's been a great learning experience. It sort of stuck with us as we've moved forward. And we've thought a lot about the user journey in relationship to confidence and like the phase that you're in as a user in terms of what you want to do. And like sometimes when you're more confident as a user, you're more ready to collect or be a repeat buyer or chat with an artist. But if you're just getting started, people are really walking before they're running. And in some instances, they're crawling before they're walking. And we need to get them off the ground to the point where they can, take stride on their own. And that was much more early than we were expecting in terms of their journey as users.
Wow, I love hearing that story each time, because you think that, everyone wants to be a creator and they want to have access to these really colorful people. But then once they do, maybe they're like stunned and they don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And they don't have the confidence to break through those layers of the gallery and the price point and the allure around the artist. So what are some things that the platform has done to create that, I guess it's called like psychological safety in leadership?
Yeah. So one of the like core pain points that came up was this word shame, and which is it's a heavy word, right? But a lot of people had stories where, they would say, when I was 15, I was really good at printmaking and art class in high school, but my sister was dubbed the creative one and I had to go into business. And little things like that. Or like I used to play violin when I was growing up, and then I was told that it was impractical to ever be a musician. And a lot of people have these stories like baked in them at very early stages of their youth. And so most people have some thread. And it's really interesting the more you talk to people, because it will come out, either in later stages of their life or earlier stages of their life. But that's what we think is really important about our product, is that it can reach everyone, because creativity is a part of everyone's life at some point, whether they've distanced themselves from it or if they're still close to it now. So within the product, we think a lot about that, again, that distance in the user journey. And for us, there are a lot of different concepts and features that we try to bake in to build people's confidence and to create that safety. So one thing that's really important is that we have this principle that everyone is their own curator, and that the consumer of tomorrow in particular is their own curator. So if you like art that is about, literature and environmentalism, you can connect with artists that have those same values and are into those same vibes. And it doesn't mean that their work is only good because someone at Sotheby's gave it a stamp of approval. It means that it's good because you like it, and your taste is your taste, and your taste should be celebrated. Another example is actually being able to build mood boards together. So getting collaborative feedback and signaling that, your taste is good, or that your friends want to do it with you. That creates a lot of safety in terms of familiarity, and also giving credibility back to you through those artists. So if you're building something into a mood board and you're saying, this is like, Jay-Z's mood board for my living room, and it's all about, again, maybe feminist art or some type of topic, then the artist can actually go in and boost your mood board if their work is featured in it. So it creates a lot of virtuous cycles of confidence boosting back and forth between users. And when you think about how it works today, like it's pretty much a vacuum online. If you go to an art marketplace and you buy something, the artist will get payment and they'll send out the work, but there's no connection. There's no feedback. All the user can do is buy, and all the all the seller can do is sell. So we're giving them a lot of different ways to foster interactions that are more high touch, but also very lightweight and easy. And over time, the goal is that, they will transact more, and that they will build their confidence, that they will engage more in art around them, go to more art events, or, post their thoughts about something and think about art in the same way that they think about fashion or food or music and all these other cultural verticals that, a lot of people have strong opinions about because they've had that tool to build their taste in that realm.
I see. So that's really interesting because I remember this documentary about Grace Kelly and how her mom thought that her sister was going to be the Hollywood star. And then, she marries the Prince of Monaco. Hollywood knights her, kind of gives her that stamp of approval, like you're talking about Sotheby's. And for all of us, who probably had a lot of creative people in our lives who kind of gave us the stamp of approval, it's easy, but then everyone should have access to that. They can have these light touch moments without the fear of chatting directly.
Yeah, and there's a big part of it that's about people's role in the network. And another thing of feedback was that people said, I don't want to chat with someone until my profile looks really good. And what is my profile? Like, what is it hosting? What am I supposed to do here? If I'm not really a collector yet, am I an explorer? Am I an appreciator? Am I a traveler? Am I a writer? So giving people the tools to identify themselves and sort of identify where they're at in the journey, is a really crucial piece of that puzzle. And then giving people the ability to extend out their hand to invite their friends in and to be that familiar face that makes it feel a little bit more comfortable when you're walking into the party, so to speak. Those are all things that we think about in particular with onboarding. And again, a lot of the social signaling that happens within the product.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that light touch onboarding. We all want to be creative, and this is such a good way to do it. All right, we'll move on to question 2. How much impact has design thinking made your company?
I mean, we, from day one, have been impacted from design thinking. It's been a very important core value of ours as a team. I think we have a lot of market understanding. So my co-founder Shaveen has had her own gallery for like 15 years, and she's like a bigwig art dealer. And I've been working with artists throughout my whole career, and we almost know too much that sometimes when you think about building a product and you're building from what you think that's actually not what users need. So the more that we've talked to users, the more we've understood, there are a lot of gaps that maybe we couldn't have originally seen. And with design thinking in particular, we've been able to uncover a lot of ways to break down those barriers with specific features or tools or experiences that, these types of users might not have otherwise had access to. And I think for us, a big discovery in particular has just been around the relationship between commerce and community. And for us, when we got started, we kind of debating, do we build more of a community or do we build more of like a marketplace? And we actually leaned heavier on the community side. And we said, okay, we're going to build these socially fueled features that, again, enable people to chat with artists in ways that make them feel very uncomfortable, or find art in relationship to their taste, or make mood boards with friends and like build their profile and build that confidence. And what happened was that it ended up fueling a lot of commerce. People would get to the end of the feature set and they're like, I want to buy this now. Now that I have this connection with this artist, I really, want to collect it. I love this piece. I love this person. I want to showcase it on my profile now that I have a role here. So I think the more that we've seen that insight, the more we've actually been able to build a product that's connecting those two bridges and has them, interwoven with one another. And I think when you are generally thinking about like the relationship of art and value, so much of it is very much community fueled and like it's subjective. And so like getting to that crux and that understanding was only possible through design thinking and actually talking to people and again, iterating on a lot of those user journey insights.
Yeah, I love the humility of design thinking because a lot of experts come in and they still learn something new.
Yeah.
Or you come in as a novice and maybe that's the most pure and virtuous stance because you're just learning from the user. How does it feel for the company to have gone through those kind of pivots, from chat in the beginning to kind of like chat at the end of the journey? What was that like for you or other leaders?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard, right? You go through a lot of ups and downs, and it's really frustrating often, you know?
It's so frustrating.
Like with the engineers that are building this beautiful code, and then you have the designers that make this beautiful design, and that sometimes you have to scrap it all and you have to start over. And it's really frustrating. It can be very demoralizing. I think the thing that gives you hope and that creates that spirit throughout is when the users start to turn a corner. So for us, when people were saying, I hate this chatting thing, I was like, hey, they don't feel indifferent, right? Like, this is something that they care about. All of a sudden they have an opinion about, like, let's unpack this. Like, why do they hate it so much? Like, there's something here, right, that people are hooking to. And so the minute you solve that and you position it in a different way, and you give them all these little stepping stones, where and then all of a sudden maybe they do want to chat because they've like built this confidence, and then they get super excited. And so the more we've had users express that for us, it's a feedback loop for our team, right? Where all of a sudden we're getting, users that are sending us keynote presentations of different feature ideas or bug fixes. And
oh, really? That's awesome.
us, middle of the night kind of thing. And wearing the Cohart merch and stuff. And I think in that realm, like, we feel as though we're building with our early adopter community, again, because we've been building in public. And for that, we're very grateful, and it's what motivates us and fuels us. And it's what has enabled us to get early traction, to reach fundraising milestones, to keep building and to keep iterating and to keep building on top of the things that we think were really good to start and having to redo it. So it's just a journey, and I think we've learned to enjoy it over time now that we're sort of used to that rhythm of, continual iteration.
Thanks for the honesty there. I think that it's really hard for experts to kind of see that they were wrong. And
yeah,
I think it's a similar journey for me, because you build kind of the end state and then you forget about the onboarding, or how people would start on the platform versus how they would end on the platform.
Yeah, the reality is every step is so important, and could be something that's as little as a word or the positioning of a button that throws someone off the user journey, especially when it's in relationship to something like art and creativity. There might already be sensitivity around. So that's, to your earlier point around psychological safety. It's in every aspect of the product. And, I don't think we're fully there yet, but because we're obsessing over it every day, eventually we will be, and so it's sort of this thing where you have to write it down every day and talk about it as a team every day, and then collectively brainstorm and synthesize together and make sure that it's, again, a core value and a topic of conversation that you hold at a very high regard internally. And then the results start to, come in over time.
So then the follow-up for this question before I move on is the idea of disruption. You've talked about Kendall and Cohart disrupting the art world, and I still think of the art world as like some Gagosian or very like highfalutin one dealer who only picks the wealthiest clients and then talks up the myth of the insane artist, and then sells like a limited edition. And so are you disrupting the art world?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think we're building an entirely new paradigm where artists are at the core, in the center of the value chain. They're able to own their business, own their community. They have tools to do that strategically in Cohart. So, they could still work with intermediaries, but it's on their own terms. Now they have access to a collector demographic. Again, they have access to tell their own story in their own words. They have access to things like analytic tools to grow their audience. They're effectively SMBs, and they've just been put on the sideline in front of or behind all these intermediaries, right? So we're putting them in the center. And I think similarly for consumers, we're also really propping them up. And we're saying, the consumer, again, of tomorrow is their own curator. Like, their taste is valuable, and they should be able to access art and creativity and access it in a way that's meaningful to them. And I just don't think a lot of art world players have done that in the past. Like, they've sort of put consumers down at a lower tier and say, like, we need to educate you. We need to tell you what's important and what's valuable. And we're really flipping that on its head. So long-term, our goal is that by investing in both of those key stakeholders, like the direct consumer and the direct artist, and celebrating their stories and celebrating their creativity and, the consumer's path to finding what that is, will foster much more commerce, because people will have that direct connection and they have that story, and it's deeply personal. It's about their own life, and it's about something that they identify with, and so they want to tell their friends, they want to tell their family, they want to post it on social media, and it's the greatest flywheel, right? It's something that people are celebrating and becoming ambassadors of. And I think over time, like, we can change the way that people all around the world feel about art, and again, position it as this vertical that's right next to fashion, it's right next to food, it's right next to music. And I always joke that on Spotify, everyone calls himself a DJ, right? It's like, I'm showing everyone my playlist and I'm all confident about my music taste. And I think we can do the same thing by enabling everyone to really confidently call themselves an art collector.
Wow, I'm going to ask one more question then, because this is such an interesting topic and close to my heart. Can you give an example of the journey, before the conversion sales moment? What are some of the safe steps that lead up to it? And then maybe at the end, at the sale, does the sale feel different for the artist because it's closer? I'd just love to hear an example.
Yeah, so I always start by contrasting, right? Like, so how it works today. Typically, if you're thinking about buying a piece of art, you're maybe considering going to a gallery that's local. Maybe you're poking around on Instagram. Maybe you end up going to Saatchi Art or a product marketplace. You see something, you think it's kind of interesting. Again, you hit buy, and it just like shows up at your doorstep, and you hang it on your wall. Someone asks you about it, and you're like, yeah, I got this piece online, and I don't know. I think it's kind of cool, like matches the vibe of my house, but it's sort of a weird experience. And that happens if you buy it from IKEA. It can even happen if you buy it, while traveling from a gallery. Like, you still don't really know the story, and it's kind of stressful. And similarly, as an artist, maybe you're posting your work on Instagram, you're posting your work on LinkedIn, and then you're actually selling on a website, again, pick on Saatchi, but you sell it on Saatchi Art, and you never meet that collector. You don't have that collector's email. You can't build a relationship or connection with them. So again, it's very much structured as a fulfillment purchase online today. Versus on Cohart, it's talking from the consumer side. When you get started, it's asking immediately about you. So Jay-Z, like, what are you into? What are your values? What are your vibes? Like, what do you want your home to feel like? There's price tools that are baked into it that creates safety for you to find things within a realm that feels accessible. And then it's not like buy or get out. You can save things to mood boards. You can watch videos of artists. You can learn more about their process and their story. And then if eventually you develop a connection to the piece, you can buy it. And if you buy it, the artist is going to send it to you. You can do a video call with the artist if you want, and like see their studio. And then once it comes, you can hang it on your wall, but it's also on your Cohart profile. So you can showcase your collections. You can showcase that as part of your identity. And then all of a sudden, you and that artist have this connection in the network where the artist can say, hey, Jay-Z is one of my new collectors, and point everyone to you. And then you build that confidence, you build that network through them. So we've had artists and collectors that have, bought from each other first time and have met in person. Like, one woman flew to Italy to meet this artist. Yeah. In this tiny village. We've also had people cry on like virtual Zoom calls because they're part of the artist's studio and they learn about the artist's story and it resonates with them. So it's just such a rich experience, and it's hard to really explain it until I think you have it. And again, from the artist side, when you're selling directly, right now we're taking 25% of sales, which seems high, but galleries take 50 to 70, Saatchi takes 80%. Yeah. So you're actually more in charge of your business. And then you're building this CRM of your collectors that are buying from you and that are celebrating your work. And then there are, again, all these flywheels where you have testimonials, like you have visibility in the network through the collectors that are saving or purchasing your work. And it's all under this prism and umbrella of your own story, where you are talking about the concepts of the pieces. Like, you are the one behind the video talking about, the work itself. And so to have ownership of that is huge, because it demystifies a lot of this, overly conceptual wall text that we're all used to seeing in art, and it just humanizes it again. So that's where the name comes from, Cohart. It's all about art discovery through the lens of human connection and community. And that's really like the core, of what the product is seeking to achieve.
Okay. And then, sorry, one last question and then we'll move on. In terms of other platforms like Kickstarter or Patreon or just like Meta, Insta, Facebook, how do you see the other players? If it's not them, maybe it's someone else.
You mean in terms of like competitive landscape and other? Yeah. So the really interesting thing about art, again, the value is subjective, right? So as an artist, you're always thinking about your branding. You're always thinking about, where is my work going? Who is collecting it? Who's curating it? Because that will change the way that your work is priced, the way your work is viewed under that whole, prism of the art world. So there's a real reputational risk to have your work on Etsy, or to even be dubbed an Instagram artist today. I think that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily take into account. So the fact that this is like very much industry credible is super important. Like, we're founders from the art world. There's like credibility in terms of the type of art that's on the platform. Again, it's not to say that anything under like the Sotheby's level is illegitimate, but it's saying that the mid-market, there's actually a lot of value here, and it just hasn't really been uplifted. And then I'd say in terms of these broader social networks, they actually work in tandem with what we're doing. So we talk a lot about content syndication and content moving cross-platform from, through Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, for people to create little sound bites or, content snapshots of things that they're doing on Cohart. But we really own the commerce section. So we're enabling artists to have their storefront, to have the shipping authentication tools, everything in one place. Like, if you're selling on Cohart, everything's insured. It just creates trust for both the collector and the artist. And then once you do sell on here, again, you track that collector. Like, they're a part of your CRM system. If you want to update them, you just send them a notification whenever you have a new work. You don't have to build like a MailChimp email, whenever you have new pieces. So even if people are discovering that artist content on these broader social networks, they're still coming back to transact here, because it has that trust and that verification around e-commerce.
I see. So on Poshmark, there's a verified authentication. If it's a fake, you can return it, and that would never exist on like Insta. So
yeah, and that's the whole value prop around vertical marketplaces that I think is really interesting. That's sparked a lot of adjacent verticals. You think about vertical marketplaces like Nextdoor or Poshmark or even Twitch, and some of these feature sets that they built are really specific to that vertical. And so that's what we're trying to hone in on, like what's specific about art in particular. And again, it's a lot around authentication, price advising, insurance, shipping,
I see,
commissions, logistics in general. And that's part that we're taking ownership of in the whole process.
Well, thanks for answering all the follow-ups. Let's move on to our last question. What questions do you have for this founder design thinking community?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, something we talk a lot about is having multiple personas. And I think that is a beauty and a challenge, right? Like, any marketplace model is going to have supply and demand. And we sort of have a three-sided marketplace with curators. And so we always toggle with the energy, so to speak, to give them in each persona, like how to prioritize their needs in the roadmap. So I'd be really curious to hear use cases from the community in terms of how they've thought through that problem. If people are just prioritizing supply and then demand, or if they prioritize demand and supply, or if they kind of co-prioritize. And also, like, how does that change over time? So how do you benchmark when to sort of switch gears? How do you think about their personas evolving over time? Like, does the supply become the demand long term? So I think it would just be interesting to hear inspirational stories from other founders that have thought about that question and are dealing with it, on a daily or monthly basis.
Yeah, we talked about buyers become sellers on certain fashion platforms. So the traditional route is for collectors of art to maybe take a class or learn to be an artist themselves. So is that the type of transition that you're looking at from I guess, demand to supply, or something else?
Yeah, I think for us, it's across all the personas. So consumers could become curators, right? Like they could build mood boards that go viral and then all of a sudden become taste makers. Artists can also become curators, right? Some artists have great taste and they actually love curating. And then on the artist side, there are a lot of artists that collect art, and then on the collector side, there are a lot of people that also love to produce art. And so there's a lot of overlap between the personas. And even when we ask people, again, as an example with onboarding, who are you? We kind of don't ask that question because we know some people have, especially in the creative realm, like multiple identities. And we want to celebrate that and make space for it. But we also want to give people a real starting point. And so it's a real challenge every day that we're facing, to create that flexibility and the fluidity and almost to reward people as they move through that dynamic role shape shifting, but also to be really clear about what are the things that you can do here if you're entering as a curator versus a collector, and trying to make that messaging very fine tuned so we don't confuse the broader public.
That's really interesting because most people do start with multiple roles, and the prioritization, like you said, is difficult. Like, which one do they pick, or do you pick to prioritize? And then just following up on the supply versus demand. Usually in a marketplace, the supply is a priority. Like if you don't have enough artists, then you don't have enough collectors. But have you seen that change in your company or other companies?
I mean, I think for us, there's a little bit of toggling in that right now the market is somewhat capped. Like a lot of consumers need art, but they don't know where to go. And a lot of artists don't have enough collectors because they haven't had that visibility. So there is some component of demand driving supply and demand driving more demand. And so again, talking about like there's no straight answer for us, I think it's a little less simple than maybe how like DoorDash or some of the like the food delivery marketplaces have done it, where it's like, okay, you just get aggregate, restaurants in one area and think about like San Francisco or even Uber. It's like, okay, you just think about San Francisco as a starting market. You get enough drivers. And then once you get enough drivers and like the flywheel is moving with the riders, then you go to another market. And for us, the challenge is like art is so global. We have artists in every continent now. And it's like, it's like this challenge of, okay, how do you get aggregate density, right? And how and that's important, or do people want to buy from artists around the world? And then therefore, how many verticals do we need to represent? And like Thumbtack, I know they were sort of low density marketplace because like the frequency was lower. And so for us, like the buying frequency is also lower, and maybe we can be low density and spread more geographically. And it's very much like an ongoing learning based again on what users are expressing their needs around with like that whole marketplace ratio. But I think it's going to be leaner than we expected. Like I actually think we need less artists per consumers, and giving artists more discoverability is very valuable because there's almost too much information on a lot of marketplaces today. And it can be overwhelming as a consumer. And then also if you're not getting discovered as an artist, then you don't really get a lot of value there.
Yeah, I think that's a great example because you need the demand to fuel the supply. And so from those food delivery and ride share examples, there's so many examples of the pricing changing, like when there's rush hour and there's surge pricing versus artists not feeling the love and like not feeling like there are enough consumers who are liking them, then they might not, come or stay.
Yeah. That's the beauty and the challenge of a marketplace model. It's like an ongoing relationship of, supply and demand ratios and figuring out the value, even if it's being met, for both parties as the numbers fluctuate.
Yeah, so anyone who has experience or the same question as Kendall around, I think that concept of density, right? Is it the slice of the persona in a certain country, or is it just a price point, or is it type of buyer? Please get in touch with her and discuss. Well, I think that those were our three main questions. Do you have anything else to share or say, maybe a product launch or anything else for the community?
Yeah, no, I'd love to invite everyone to download our beta if you're on iOS and test things out. Um, my email is kendall@cohart.com, and I love user feedback. So any input that you have in terms of how to create more psychological safety, how to create more value as an artist or as a consumer, is something that we are always very excited to hear about. So please reach out with any thoughts and input. Um, and we're excited to be in a conversation with the builders and with the early adopters, and really build this together. Like, I think that's our objective above all else, is to, again, create value and to sort of be the shepherds or help bring things to life. So we're just all ears, and trying to build with as opposed to just building for.
Yeah, so everyone please download the app, give lots of feedback. And I think everyone has an opinion about the art world and the buying process. So I think Kendall's saying, don't be shy. All right, Kendall. Well, thank you so much for your stories and your experience. I think we'll do a voice transcription of this and use some AI to summarize everything you've said so that it's shareable. And actually, my next guest will be Marina, who is co-founder of VoicePen, powering these kind of transcriptions so that we can write a blog post in a couple of minutes versus like a couple of hours.
Wow. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kendall, for
thank you,
all your thoughts.
Yeah, appreciate you having me here. Excited to keep listening in and learning from everyone who's coming on, and have some people that could be interesting for you to talk to next as well. So I'll send those folks over your way. But I think, again, it's a continual conversation for all of us. And I think the more collaborative we are as builders, the better, because there's a lot that we can learn from each other.
Thank you. And I see that Rachel Finn commented a question. How do you plan to use design to convert and engage users who are not already interested in fine art discoverability?
Yeah, it's a great question that we talk about a lot. Thank you, Rachel. I think for us, thinking about design is a really important, barrier reducer for that accessibility gap. So for us, a big way that we're addressing it is by not just thinking about art as a JPEG and a price point. I think, that's a pretty static way to think about art online. And so giving people that might not be as interested, that might not know as much about art, the tools to actually learn more about the story of the piece, or again, see videos of the artist and get hooked to the pieces in other ways, to learn fun facts, to like contribute their thoughts, to have an engagement with the artist. I think that immediately sparks more connection to the work itself, and again, closes that gap of accessibility. We're also exploring a lot of events. That's worked really well for us, having kind of like what So Far Sounds has done, like bringing people into artist studios and saying, hey, if you're interested in like feminism and literature, like this is an artist that has similar like values and topics that she's focusing on with her work. We think you'd really enjoy like meeting her and seeing her studio. We've done a couple of those, and people are always really blown away by the experience of, again, that process and like being in the artist's world. So we're going to plan on doing those offline and online. So introducing more like live stream features in the product where people can have that connection and they can lurk, without having to show up in person, but kind of have, again, that confidence boost where maybe they're watching an artist talk about something that they, again, have a personal connection to that sparks a deeper interest for them to go, into the next level of discovery.
Well, I love that, because I think I only did artist visits in New York when I was involved with like MoMA and the Brooklyn and PS1 Queens scenes. And now that I don't live in a big city anymore, that would be a great virtual way to have access and know the
Yeah.
process. So
I think
bringing
it's
the
conversation. That's a really important piece of the puzzle.
Okay, bring the conversation back. Well, unless there are other questions, anyone have questions, please feel free to comment or get in touch with Kendall or I directly on LinkedIn. We're also on Insta, Twitter, and I think you just launched TikTok as well.
Yeah, we're live on all the channels.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kendall, for disrupting the art industry.
Yeah, thank you, Jay-Z. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.